Welcome back, ultra running fans, to another episode of Buckle Up, an ultra running conversation. Mandy, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well, Brian. I'm not gonna lie. I am looking forward to this final countdown towards the end of September.
Okay. End of September. So today is September 2nd, the day after Labor Day weekend. How was your Labor Day weekend?
It was great. Actually, was home all weekend. Windsor has this wild thing called Windsor Harvest Fest. I don't know if you've heard of it or your family's gone. I'm sure they have. It's like 4 days of hot air balloons, parades, hot air balloons, barbecues, concerts, fireworks. So yeah, maybe I don't sound well because I was like singing at those concerts. I went to Goo Goo Dolls last week, and I'm also, if you saw my Instagram, prepping more cones because we have another almost 200-mile race we're putting on this weekend. So I'm
Yeah.
just juggling it all. What
You and
about you?
cones. You got a lot of cones. Lots of cone activity. Yeah, the cones are everywhere. And then you have like murdered cones and all sorts of stuff going on. Anyway,
Adopted
um,
cones. We're gonna need some
adopted
adopted
cones. Yes, yes,
cones.
yeah.
You might see them out there this weekend when you
That's
go
a really
mark this
nice,
trail.
polite way of saying like you borrowed the cone indefinitely as like an adopted cone. Like it sounds like you're taking it under your wing, like an adopted puppy.
Well, you are. If you see a cone being mistreated out there, you guys, and it's run over and it's clear that their owner's never coming back, join my Adopt a Cone program.
You probably have like a side corner of the garage or the big shed out back where it's got like 8 different size cones and they're all different shapes and like different diameters and they're like
Yeah,
just oddball ones, right? They don't fit the regular standard because they're all
yeah.
adopted.
Yeah, so my family, my friends know me for having so many cones, so they'll ask if they can borrow my cones for an event. And so when I
And
when I lend out cones to family or friends, those are the first ones that get lent out, or the
the
ones that I
adopted ones.
don't really belong to me, but I just have them. So,
Hmm.
what about you? Did you
I
do
might have
any?
an adopted cone around here
Yeah, you
somewhere.
had a cone back there.
Yeah.
Um,
It may have came from the town of Basalt, but I don't actually know. I couldn't confirm or deny that.
you can take it with you when you go help me mark this course tomorrow.
We had a good weekend. It was pretty laid back and quiet. Actually, we've been super busy with all sorts of summer activities. So this weekend, my wife worked at the hospital, so it was just my 2 daughters and I, and we kind of relaxed quite a bit. To be honest, my little one played with a friend at the river, and you're never going to believe this, but I fell asleep in a lounge chair on the side of the river. Like, and that's like completely out of character for me. Like, I'm such a busybody and I'm always like just
Yeah.
moving and tinkering with stuff. I did fly my drone a little bit. I was trying to get some more practice with it. And then I sat down in this chair and was watching them play on the beach. And I thought I'd give them 20 minutes. And 40 minutes later, I kind of came to my daughter standing in front of me, asking me, like kicking sand at me, asking me if I'm sleeping.
Well, at least she was still there and you didn't get woken up by the police being like,
True.
"Sir, you can't sleep here." Did you look like you needed a home to
No,
sleep in?
no.
Like for
I
your
had a really nice towel over my head to keep the sun off, and I was in a nice beach chair. I had like all the appropriate gear with me.
Were you, here's another question that could have been alarming by a bystander that came by. Were you showing off your toes and your runner feet?
My feet were exposed, yeah, and my
Okay.
feet are pretty hammered. But that's a great segue to today's guest. Dr. Tonya Olson joins the show this afternoon and shared with us some foot care recommendations. Not even some, like a ton of foot care recommendations. I'm going to have to use quite a bit of these things to get my feet looking healthy again.
Yeah, so I didn't talk about it in the show, but like knock on wood, I've been pretty lucky when it comes to foot issues. Like I haven't been plagued with a lot of blisters or hot spots or injuries or things that are nagging. But like her approach is just really good. It's just to observe and pay attention. And maybe you are someone that rarely deals with anything, but or you're someone that really should be thinking about more often because it plagues you all the time. One thing we didn't ask her though was her guilty pleasure because we know what it is. Like she's watching foot videos all the time
Oh
and
no,
blister
it's
popping.
Dr. Pimple Popper. I
Yeah,
guarantee it. It's Dr. Pimple Popper.
I share that one too. That was going to be mine for today, and so it actually kind of goes hand in hand because I enjoy watching blisters get popped, and I do watch a little Dr. Pimple Popper.
Do you have the prosthetic pimple popper where you can get like fake pimple popper juice and then like would that satiate that need for you?
I think it would. There's got to be someone's googling
That's
this now. I even
disgusting.
I even have dreams about like finding a bump on my head and then like pulling out like a snake or a worm or something. You can totally delete this out if you want, but there's got to be something in us, people that are fascinated by Dr. Pimple Popper or dream about the extraction process. No, I don't have one, probably because I don't think I tell, like I don't even think Nick knows that I like watching, like if I'm scrolling on YouTube or Instagram and it
Mhm.
pops up, I stay there for a little bit too long uncomfortably. But I don't think anyone in my family
Mhm.
or friends until now know this guilty pleasure.
Now the secret's out.
So what's your new one?
Oh, there was another one that was just up was you know, the really good TV broadcast channel called Bravo.
Yeah.
I really enjoy Below Deck, the boating yachting show, and they have like guests that come on, but the staff is really the show, and then the guests are just like weekly occurrences that happen, so they're not really the main gist of the show. It's the deck staff or the boat staff that provide all the services for those guests. They're like usually 20 something year old
Mhm.
people and they have a ton of drama and they drink too much and they go out partying all the time. I watch a ton of that. I think I've watched probably every episode at some point in my tenure of Bravo channel watching.
I mean, that's not that bad. I thought you were going to say Real Housewives, and then we were going to have a separate
No,
conversation.
I can't do the others. I even thought because it's on Bravo and it's already crappy TV that I
Yeah,
could probably just convert it over to a different one, but I cannot
yeah.
get into the Vanderbilts or the Real Housewives of any city at all ever made.
Ever.
Yeah, yeah, it's Below
Below
Deck.
Deck isn't bad though. Like
It's pretty bad.
it's industry specific, so at least you're learning a little bit of like what happens on a
Mm,
boat, how do operations work. No,
I do like I've lived in a lot of different places, so I would like to live on a boat. It's like for like a year. I mean, these are all things when I was like single. Like I lived in a teepee and I lived in a van and I lived in a shack and all these things. But probably not at this point in my life with a mortgage and a wife and a dog and two kids. Probably not going to live on a boat anytime soon.
I don't think so. So you're just gonna have to continue watching your show. I'll continue watching popping videos. Maybe after today's call, I'll watch a little bit more Blister Lansing videos. And I can't wait to hear from Dr. Tanya on what her guilty pleasure was. And she's probably just going to agree with us.
Yeah, maybe we'll never know, but maybe it's a good question for this second episode that we spur the moment I brought up at the very end that we could talk about internal foot injuries. But this episode is really geared towards external foot injuries, surface level stuff. The blisters, the taping, the hot spots, what to do before, during, and after your event. And it's all also spelled out in a book that she is a co-author in, the seventh edition of Fixing Your Feet. I'm holding it up for those that aren't watching, but I'm holding it up to the screen. And this is the seventh edition, and that this could fall right in line with your blister popping fetish there going on.
Yeah, that picture fills the cup. I can move on with the rest of my day and go work on cones, which is another odd hobby of mine.
Well, we'll catch up to you soon, Mandy. We'll probably see each other later this week. And thank you all for listening. Share, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know if you have a story idea or a guest you want us to talk to. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to Mandy and or I on any of the social media platforms out there. So without further ado, here is Dr. Tonya Olson and How to Treat Your Feet. Dr. Tonya Olson, thank you so much for taking some time out of your afternoon to join us after the busy holiday weekend. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Did you have a
How
good
about you?
weekend?
Oh yeah, of course.
What'd you do?
Yeah. What did I do? Oh, I did a little bit of work, and then I got outside, played a little bit on water and land, and then a friend of mine whose love language is food. They had me over for dinner and had this amazing halibut with chutney. Oh, it wasn't called. Anyhow, it was amazing. I
Excellent,
don't cook,
excellent. Sounds
so
great.
anytime anyone feeds me, I'm always like stoked about it.
That sounds like a great Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, it was good. How about you guys?
Busy.
I think I was going to say we probably did the same things. Like we probably
Yeah.
worked a little bit. I'm going to assume that Mandy worked a little bit. I'm pretty sure that she told me she was working a little bit, and I was working a little bit. Yeah, but yeah, it was nice to have an extra day as well. Like the kids were around.
Yeah.
It's the end of summer, right? Actually, in Florida, where you're at currently, don't you have to put away the white linen pants now? Isn't that the rule?
Exactly. There's no white after Labor Day, apparently.
Yeah. You go navy blue. Go with navy
Yeah,
blue from here on
yeah.
out. Yeah.
That was astute.
thank you so much for taking some time this afternoon to talk to us about all things feet. But before we get into feet, we usually back up and kind of see where our guests came from and how they came to become what they're doing currently. And you are in this ultra running foot space, probably a few other spaces as well, I would imagine. But in our niche sport of ultra running, you are the foot care specialist, and we want to hear all about it. How you got here, though, that's the real question.
So it's so interesting. It's like my whole life has just come together to have this unique set of skills. I grew up riding horses. I don't know if you've heard the term no hoof, no horse. And there's just a really strong, just appreciation for, your horse. It's just a really important thing. And you're creating like exercise programs, training programs. You're outside. Like I spent half my childhood. I was fortunate enough to be able to spend a lot of time trail riding with my horse. And it's just that kind of piqued the interest. And then that sort of set me up for going to physical therapy school. And after I rode horses for a living for a while, but I was living in Bend, Oregon back in 2009. I moved there like in '07. And there was a group of runners that were driving down from Bend and who were going to go to Western States. And I was just kind of tagging along. I didn't have like a dedicated plan or anything like that. Just going to go hang out with my friends, support my friends. And I asked Sean Meisner, who's just an old school ultra runner back in the Montrail days. I asked him, I said, hey, Sean, like, I'd like to volunteer. Like, where should I go? And he knew that I was interested in feet and all that. And he goes, go to Michigan Bluff and work with John Bonhoff. And then that's where it started. Like, I just walked into the aid station and I was like, oh, hey, my name's Tonya. Like, and John's like, oh, I'm John. And then we just hit it off like immediately. He became like a really good friend of mine and a mentor. And he's effectively the person who invented foot care as a thing in the ultra running space. Like he was running ultra marathons because he's in his early mid 70s now. He was running ultras in Western states back like in the 80s and 90s, and he just noticed that people were having trouble with their feet. So, and he has kind of a researcher's mind. So he created like, the taping techniques and just a thought process of how to be more thoughtful about creating a foot care program. And he published Fixing Your Feet back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I worked with him at Western States at Michigan Bluff for 10 years, and then he moved to Tennessee and retired. But during that process, he asked me to be the co-author of the latest edition. And that's kind of how it's all happened. My perspective as a physical therapist on foot care is a great deal more comprehensive. And, I try to look for like the cause of what's happening rather than just fixing whatever's happening and just moving on. And so in the latest edition, the 7th edition, we ended up adding 77 pages of content. And I say that because sometimes people will say, oh, I have like the 4th edition. I'm like, that's a completely different book than the latest one. So that's the medium length story of.
I was just checking. You had me checking. I have the 7th edition.
Oh yeah, yes you do. So you got Tanya's tips in there. That's awesome. Perfect.
7th edition. There you are.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, I just showed my book, my Fixing Your Feet 7th edition book, and I like it. I think it's more like it's not a book you read front to back. I think it's more like an encyclopedia. You kind of go to the table of contents, you find out a specific topic, whether it's taping or toes or heels or blisters, and you kind of like go to that chapter and kind of read up on it and kind of figure it out and work your way through the chapter.
Yeah, he created it, like his vision is just to have it be like a resource.
Mm-hmm.
And just you have to remember that when he wrote the first edition, the first few editions, like the internet wasn't really a thing. Like Amazon, I know it's hard to imagine, but there was a time when Amazon did not exist. So there was not a warehouse or a resource where you could find all the things that you might want to find. And so one of the biggest things that book offered was an introduction to all different types of supplies or equipment or products that runners could use to be helping them solve their foot care problems. There was a website years ago, this was in the early 2000s. It was called Zombie Runners, and it offered some ultra running specific products. exposing people to different options to problem solve was one of the things also that book does. But yeah, it's due for a new edition. But I need a minute.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Tonya, so it sounds like this was one of like the first to market with all comprehensive, and now to think how many there are out there. Like, do you guys pay attention to that, and who's writing the new book on foot care? What
There is
topics? No.
there is nothing comparable.
Okay.
There's nothing at all. There isn't. It's the first of its kind.
Okay.
There's a lot of time and effort dedicated to creating a book like that. I think somebody would have to be just kind of a masochist if they wanted to reinvent that wheel.
Mhm.
There's some that have that, but yeah, I mean, fixing your feet is just it's the most comprehensive resource.
I know of 3 buddies in Glenwood Springs, where I live right here, that have it on their bookshelf as well, and we all use it
Oh,
as a
sure.
resource. Definitely,
I mean,
yeah. It's totally the book for foot care.
yeah.
And it's just, I mean, it's right there under my desk, which is where my bookshelf is.
Yeah,
I know
I've
that.
never read it. Guilty.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, like, there's a lot of people who have read the book are sharing their information. So Mandy, you're probably getting info from people, because information is easier to be shared than it was like in the early days of that book. There's online forums and that sort of thing. I've got online resources as well that people can tap into. So information is a lot easier to come by nowadays. But yeah, I need to re-up. It needs to be redone, or updated, because there's a lot has happened since this latest one. Constantly tweaking things.
Yeah.
So you went to school for physical therapy, and you got a doctorate in physical therapy, but you had an emphasis on orthopedics, right? If I'm not mistaken. I mean, I believe that's kind of how you got into the lower extremities and that kind of deal. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so here's the thing, like physical therapy, we are trained in school from cradle to grave, all settings. And I was unique enough in my non-traditional way of in navigating in this world. I actually had the opportunity, or kind of created the opportunity. I've worked in all different settings as a physical therapist, anywhere from working with high-level elite runners. When I lived in Eugene, we were the exclusive providers of physical therapy to the Oregon Track Club, and that's a feeder team for the Nike athletes. And so, and we had a bunch of equipment. It was really cool. To working in like hospice, like I've worked everywhere in between. I've worked as a wound, and one of the settings that I've worked in that's been really helpful for me from foot care perspective is working as a wound care specialist. That's something that physical therapists are trained in. So understanding tissue dynamics, understanding the healing process, understanding the different products that you use and why you use them. I think that's part of the reason why I'm so nerdy about foot care and like creating like more of a clinical reasoning process. Like one size doesn't fit all. You should have your basic things that you do for foot care, but you need to be able to modify in order to do things properly, or to have a higher efficacy or to reduce the chance of things going sideways. You need to be tailoring what you're doing to the conditions and to your own unique needs. And so I think like my variety of training and experience definitely plays into my nerdy approach to foot care. But you're right, like I've spent my time with elite athletes, especially runners. I just keep getting sucked into the running space because physical therapy is not just, like putting your hands on someone or helping them work through their injury. There's a lot that's mental. There's a lot of psychology. And we all know that runners, especially ultra runners, are a bit quirky. We're all a little crazy.
What?
And helping somebody navigate through the injury process is really something that I have as a runner, and with my long history in the running world, especially with the ultra runners. Yeah, I kind of don't really have a choice. I have to work with runners because I'm good at it. But it's kind of a long answer, short question. So it's board certified in orthopedics, but I think that time working in wound care has really helped change it. I have like a higher understanding of things, or more of a comprehensive understanding of what's going on with the feet. Nerd fest all day long.
Well, I think it's interesting. We talked about this a little bit when we chatted in Leadville. Like the preventativeness of all of this is so important. You can prevent all of this, and people don't often give it enough credit, even to take it to the degree that you were just saying wound care. Like it's not an injury; it's actually a wound, and quite different. When you're talking about skincare and everything. So it's awesome to hear someone be so passionate about it, and I think there are a lot of runners that are glad that you chose to go this direction and not into vet care, because it sounds like maybe
Yeah.
vet care maybe was on the table if you were passionate about horses.
Yes,
I don't know.
I was going to be a veterinarian. That was the thing. Sometimes I kind of wonder I still would have gone into like sports medicine with the horses, but yeah. The thing, and working at Western States in Michigan Bluff, like in the early days, it was hard to get in, but it wasn't nearly like last year. 10,000 people applied to get an entry to the race, and only 369 spots are available. And for regular folks, and of course some of those are for sponsors and some of those are for elites. Like John and I would sit there and you'd get I always cry when I say this. You get there, you're sitting at mile 55 at Western States, and this runner comes in, and their feet are destroyed. It's taken him thousands of dollars, thousands of miles of preparation, blood, sweat, tears. They've sacrificed time with their families, they're socially, their work, like they've dedicated themselves to get into and run this race. And then they through, because of something that's preventable, now their race has gone sideways, and the results, they're not going to do as well. There are people who have had to drop out because of foot care issues. And John and I would just look at each other and we'd see somebody, and I'd just be like, dear God, like this didn't have to happen. Like this is completely and totally preventable. And just as it's gotten harder to get into states, like just the stakes that are the things that are at stake, like in a race like that that's so hard to get into, and just has such a reputation, and people do so much to get into, it really makes something like foot care, it makes you realize how important it can be, and that it is. And so that's really kind of what lit the fire under me I'm just like, I just cannot, like, I have to be more vocal about educating people about foot care, so that I just can't have another person sit in my chair and tell me they didn't know any better. Like it just breaks my heart. I'm sorry. It just does. It's just,
Yeah, we
I've
put a
been
lot.
6 years in that chair.
We put a lot into it, and to ruin your day by not taking care of your feet or being unaware of how to take care of your feet just isn't acceptable anymore, right? I mean, like
No.
we've just put so much time into it and so much energy.
Yeah, the most common answer is what? This has never happened before. And I'm like, do you live here? Like, have you trained in the Sierra Mountains with 19,000 feet of climb? Is this where you've trained? Well, no, I live in Ohio. Well, yeah. So the terrain that you're training on is different. And your training runs are what, 4 or 5 hours? Like you've been out there for how many now? They're like 15, 16, whatever, by the time they get to Mission Bluff for like the regular people. I'm like, just because it didn't happen in training does not mean it's not going to happen during a race, especially if the race conditions are very different than what you're training in. And so it just, what? I didn't know.
Let's dive into the nitty gritty and talk about like pre-event. Like it's the night before the race, it's the morning of the race, maybe not at Leadville because that's pretty early start at 4 a.m. But other races that start at a normal time, more like 8 a.m. or something, maybe it's pre-event. What am I doing for my feet? What are the best options? Let's do some hypothetical. Say I got a known hot spot on my right big toe that always flares up and always gets either a callus or a blister. What should I be doing for my feet pre-event?
So I love that you just brought that up. So first of all, you need to know your own feet. Like during training, you should be taking note of what your typical issues are. You don't have to have a skin injury to know that could become a problem. Like to know that you typically have a hot spot at a certain place, or that when it's a wet conditions, your feet tend to get a little bit more soft. You need to be interested and pay as much attention. If you paid a third of the amount of time attention to your feet as you do to your nutrition and your hydration, like everyone would be golden. So know your feet, know the difference between the conditions that you're consistently in training and how they are different or similar to the conditions you're about to run a long race in. And prevention is absolutely critical. So you know the weak spots, or you know the things that tend to happen. So if you that's your first layer of protection. Then you want to prep your foot skin and the toenails to be set up to not cause issues. So during training, callus it develops because there's consistent friction. So it's kind of like how an oyster creates a pearl. You know, it has a little bit of irritation, and then it kind of coats that grain of sand with the soft pearl, whatever it's made out of. That's basically what's happening. You get more epidermis, or the dead skin builds up in that area where you have friction. So you know already that that's an area that gets a little bit more pressure or friction. So that's a higher chance of a hot spot. So reducing the calluses before a long race is highly beneficial. If you kind of keep them at bay, like in general, that just kind of saves you some trouble. But if you're the kind of person who tends to gather calluses, larger calluses, or like moderate, like anything besides minimal, you'd want to get, like, what's really beneficial is to get a pedicure from a pedicurist who actually knows how to do a pedicure on an athlete. And there's some differences there, and that's easy enough to educate them if they're interested, to shave down the calluses, and then make sure that your toenails are shaped properly. Ideally you want to have them short, like, so you have like 1/8 of an inch of of white showing, not too short. This is why you do it like a week before. So if you get them too short, you get too aggressive with the callus removal, you got some time for that tissue to recover. And so the nails need to be straight across as possible, as short as is reasonable. And then ideally, if you ever have problems with the toenails, or if you just want to be comprehensive in your approach, if you file the toenails lengthwise, so that when you run your finger from the end of the toe up towards your body, that you don't feel a leading edge. That can reduce the chance of toenail injuries significantly, because what you're doing is you're functionally shortening the toenail. Like, you've already got them trimmed, right? But if you file down the end lengthwise, that thins that last little part, like probably that last little 1/4 inch or of the toenail. And so that toenail becomes flexible. So the end of it becomes flexible. So if you kick a rock, it doesn't wrench that toenail up off of the toenail bed, which is where you get the blood underneath the toenail. That's more like more of a traumatic cause. Or the way that your toes are moving in your shoe and the toenail itself is coming in contact with the footbed. That is a frequent issue that I see with people. If the end of the toenail is bending, instead of wrenching the toenail up off of the nail bed or even back into the base of the toenail, that can really save on some trouble in the long run. So proper remove, and the reason you want to remove calluses before a longer effort is because a callus puts you at a much higher risk for creating a blood blister. A blood blister, like a regular blister, is just the epidermis, and it's really from friction where two parallel surfaces are moving against each other, and it's like minimal pressure. A blood blister is actually from shearing forces, and shearing forces is when one thing is moving but a second thing is not. So they're still using like more of a parallel orientation, but that would be like when the skin in the foot is exposed to moisture, and the biggest creator of moisture in your foot is the 250,000 sweat glands per foot. So that is where the most of the moisture is happening. It's not the creek crossing, that you do once in 100 miles, but at least the creek crossing gets you thinking. So what can happen is that the callus gets macerated or waterlogged. It swells up, becomes more rough. Then it's going to rub on something that is near it, like the insole of the shoe, or usually the insole of the shoe. That callus then gets caught between the inside of the shoe and the bone underneath, which is not moving. So that's shearing forces. And what happens then is the epidermis, which is what the callus is made of, traps the dermis, which is the layer of skin that has the blood vessels and nerves in it. The epidermis, the callus traps the dermis between the callus and the bone underneath. And so that's where you get the bleeding happening because the dermis itself has gotten damaged. So if you have if your calluses have been shaved down and they have a lower profile and they're not going to get waterlogged and take up more space, you're going to significantly reduce the chance of a blood blister happening. And a blood blister is just a lot more painful and can be a little bit more catastrophic than just a standard blister. But with that said, if you shave a callus, you already know that's an area that gets more friction. So you have to protect it. So if you shave a callus, tape it during a race. That was a long answer to a very short question.
It was a great answer. It was a great answer. I love it.
Like you
All
said,
those
people
things.
spent as much time prepping their feet as they did everything else. Now that prep time is lengthened considerably, but super important.
Yeah, yeah. And it really doesn't, I mean, just think about the mental gymnastics you do trying to figure out hydration and nutrition. With an understanding of just the basic foot care, like you went and you need to spend like 1/16 of that mental gymnastics. It's really not that hard. You just need to know the basics and just think a little bit. If you think about your feet just a tiny bit, it pays off in spades.
All right, so we're pre-taping some hot spots, some trouble areas that we're aware of, that we've identified in training and our process leading up to this big A race that we're going to do, probably 100K, 100 miles, whatever it might be. What about lubing the feet? Wiping them down with a foot goo or I think run goo or salty britches product, any of those things? Do those things stand out as something that you'd recommend?
Yes, 100%. So besides the prep stuff that I kind of talked about and the why I talked about, preventing maceration is absolutely critical. Maceration or swamp foot, if you don't like to say maceration because it's too many syllables or it sounds like another word. Maceration is when the skin gets waterlogged. And when the skin gets waterlogged, what ends up happening is that epidermis, which is it's the outer layer of skin. It's completely composed of dead cells. Like there's nothing living in the epidermis at all. What happens is that as the skin gets puffed up and wrinkly, the connection to the dermis underneath actually becomes less strong, and the epidermis itself becomes more fragile and prone to injury, which would either be blistering or tearing. And so that's why your toes, like they've been next to each other like your entire life. Why do they only argue when you're doing a long run, or a long race? That's why. It's because maceration makes the tissue more fragile. Using a skin barrier product that creates a hydrophobic or water repelling layer on the skin is your best bet for preventing and protecting your skin from maceration. Because maceration happens no matter what, but it happens over time, and you want to delay its onset for as long as possible. Like this is why the fast people really have no trouble with their feet, because they're not out there long enough. And they're also biomechanically kind of more efficient in a lot of, the way that their feet are built and some stuff like that. But they're just not out there long enough. 15, 16 hours at Western States, that's not long enough to start having maceration issues. But the regular people who are out there for longer. And so you've probably read or heard about these fast runners, they go to do a fastest known time and they have to quit because their feet fell apart. Well, yeah, because they've never had to think about their feet, so they didn't have a plan. Because they've never been like the regular folks who are out there long enough to protect, So we talk about products. There's a lot of products out there. I have a tendency to really be recommending, my standards are very high. And so the best product out there is Salty Britches, as far as the properties to be an actual skin barrier where it protects the skin. It's lanolin based. And the lanolin actually binds with the fats in your skin itself. So it's a far superior product as far as longevity. You'll need to apply it a lot less than products. Some of the earlier products used less expensive ingredients, like they're petroleum based. Petrolatum just doesn't have the lasting power of something like lanolin, like salty britches. And I think the other one that's pretty common or mostly well known is the squirrel's nut butter. Squirrel's nut butter, like there's not really a competition between those two products because they're so very different and they have different pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses. Like salty britches, it's viscous, it's thick, it coats your skin, it stays on for a very long time. You can get 10, 12, 16 hours out of it of protection. Lanolin itself is at room temperature, it's like butter in the fridge consistency. It's like super thick. So Amy, who is a chemist who invented it, and formulated it, she really didn't have a choice but to use petrolatum or Vaseline to cut the lanolin, to make it actually be spreadable.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, like anyhow, it doesn't matter. So, because I go a tangent, because actually long distance swimmers who like swim across the channel, like the English Channel, they use Vaseline and lanolin to coat their skin to protect them from jellyfish stings, keep them warm and protect their skin from the salt water. So that's kind of where Amy got the idea. So, and then you have squirrel's nut butter, who that's like a coconut oil based or a coconut butter based product. It's all natural. So for people who are thinking like from an environmental perspective, coconut oil is more of an emollient. It can be absorbed by the skin to a much higher degree. So it doesn't tend to last as long, but it can work for people. And so just know, so you don't have to use the big guns all the time, like the salty britches. You can use something that's a little bit softer, that has some different properties. And so I would encourage people to kind of play around with different products. But those really are just the two that I recommend the most because they're the highest quality products that are on the market at the moment.
As a coach, I have to say this, Tanya, but if you're going to play around with different products, do it in your training leading up to the race. Don't do it on race day.
100%. But here's the thing, though, like from a foot perspective, the chance of something going south because of an intervention is really slim. Unless, Jesus Christ, I've seen this happen. Unless you're using a far inferior product, like you've got an old school ultra runner when there were no other options and they're recommending like duct tape or a hydrocolloid patch, a blister patch, like those products can actually create, they have a potential to create damage and create a problem. So, yeah, so you're right. Ideally during the race, you're not going to try something new, but if you try a skin barrier ointment or you try taping your foot with kinesio tape, the chance of something going south and having it negatively affect your race, if you typically do nothing, is slim. The chance of it actually helping you is a lot higher. It's different than trying like a different hydration or nutrition product where your gut can go sideways and then it's tough to get away from it. But yeah, just do something. But yeah, training is always the best place to figure out what you like. At the same time, training, you're figuring out, what kind of socks do I like? What kind of shoes work for me? What do I, that's part of the fun of like that's why we're attracted to the ultra running world, right? Because you don't have control. Like there's that what is it? It's like the ultra variable where things just go sideways and there's no explanation. It just keeps you thinking. We're all masochists to some extent, right?
That's right.
If we wanted things predictable, we'd be running short road races. That's where you have very predictable. It's a lot more predictable. Nothing against road races. They're freaking hard because you have to run the whole time fast.
So Tanya, speaking of doing something, like you said, just do something, think about it. There's probably a long list of things that we shouldn't do though. So do you want to talk a little bit about like your favorite, like biggest myths or biggest mistakes we can make when it comes to foot care other than avoiding it altogether?
Yeah, I think doing nothing is the worst, especially like it just baffles me that people will come in, they will show up, they will pull out of their drop bag at Western States 100 socks with holes in them. I'm like, Jesus Christ. People, are you kidding me?
They're favorites though. I've seen that myself.
So
quite honestly.
my husband does that, and he's going to listen to this, but I'm going to call him out. But he wears socks with holes in them. He has shoes that have holes in them. He has shoes that have no sole. Sometimes foot care is a bit of a problem. Other times he just grits through it. But I've seen it happen firsthand, and you just want to shake
Yeah,
them.
it's just from a financial perspective. It's just like all that you're especially if it's your A race. Like if it's just a weekend ultra or something like that, it's different. But I think so. Doing nothing when it's going to be a longer race, when it's going to be longer or different than where you're training, so you have all these unknown variables. Doing nothing is the worst thing to do. Not taking come on, people. Like, can you at least file your toenails? Like, do something. Like people, I can't believe I'm just
That is
shocked.
so
People put
funny.
in these raggedy ass toenails. Sorry guys, they get these raggedy toenails. They're like literally like jagged.
I had an athlete. I have to tell this story. I have an athlete that had some toenail issues. He was telling me his toes hurt, his feet hurt, yada yada. And finally, just said, "Hey, take a picture of your feet. Let me see what they look like." And I mean, it was like he was trying to grow the world's longest toenails or something. I mean, he had like it was like
Like
hanging
what?
over, and I was like, "Wait a minute, what?" I thought he was joking. I thought it was literally a joke, like he was putting me on for a minute, and he was like, "Oh no, these are my toes,and I was like,
Oh
"Oh
my
my
god, you're
gosh, get out the grinder and start
oh
chopping
my
those things down."
100%. So somebody like that's gonna need like they are definitely benefited to going to like a podi or like
A professional for sure.
a professional, somebody who knows how to manage that. But like, yeah, not attending in any way to your to having big like having a leading edge that sticks out past the end of the toenail, especially the big toe, is such a risk. Because you kick one rock and that rock is going to wrench that toenail because the toenails are thick. And so if you push on the end of it, it's going to take the entire toenail with it. So just rips that toenail up off the nail bed, can't even just jam it back into the base, and that's painful. So
Mm.
doing nothing. And I think also there's a lot of advice out there that is well intentioned, but here's the thing, guys. There was a time when all of our phones were tethered to the wall with a cord. Can we agree on that? That was all because that was all we had. That was the only option we
I was
had.
back in the
But
1900s.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. God, we can say, oh, way back in the 1900s, even the 2000s. So, but we've moved on. Like, we have phones that do not have a cord, and you don't have people out there saying, nope, I'm not going to use a cell phone because I've got this one with the cord. Like, it's old school. Like, yeah, we have the flip phone, folks, but it's still no cord. So there are still people out there who have made no effort to update their knowledge. But they're wearing, here's the thing is they're probably wearing like the latest edition of like the newest fanciest shoe, but they're using like zinc oxide on their feet and duct tape and moleskin, which are like, yes, there was a time when that was the only option, but those days are long gone. We have far superior products to be using. So using like poor quality products, especially like the hydrocolloid, I think Mandy, to kind of answer your question, the things that can actually cause damage and cause injury during an event would be number one is a hydrocolloid dressing. Those are like the oh god, I see them anyhow. I just had all these panicked calls and messages during Cocodona last year. People are like, my God, they're using blister
Mm.
patches during a race. Ah. So I had Andy like interrupted the broadcast to do like an all call. This is where you need to know the products that you're using and why you're using them. Just know the basic properties. So a hydrocolloid dressing or a blister patch, they are made to absorb moisture and to stick very securely to the skin for the life of a blister. So like 5 to 7 days. So those are very beneficial if you're going out with the girls on a weekend, or the guys, you're going to a wedding and you're wearing dress shoes and you get like a blister in the back of your heel. That's a dry, controlled, not very long, like by ultra standards, like or if you're going to Disneyland, it's totally fine to use a blister patch. During an ultra marathon where you've got your 250,000 sweat glands pumping out sweat, like copious amounts of fluid, you're crossing rivers, you're in the dirt of the trail or even the road, that hydrocolloid dressing will absorb the moisture, and then like a callus, it's taking up more space in your shoe. It has a rough profile. Now it's going to catch on something. So with every stride, it's going to get shifted. Well, because those adhere so tightly to the skin, they can then become a congealed glob of dressing, and then they will tear the skin, not just the epidermis. They will tear the dermis as well. I've seen enough just I call catastrophic, meaning it's just really gonna affect your race, and this is gonna take some time to heal because of hydrocolloid dressings. So using the right product at the right time. I think do not use during a race a hydrocolloid. If you're doing a long distance, slower paced hike, you can maybe get away with those because you're wearing like thick hiking socks and your feet aren't bathed in sweat. It's a little bit more of a controlled environment. But if you're doing an event that they're not worth the risk is not worth the tiny potential of reward. The kinesiology tape is not going to cause any trouble.
Tonya, I got this. I finished. Yeah, I finished a couple hundreds in my day. Most recently, just at Leadville. But I've seen it like time and time and time and time again. I'm running down the trail, slowly moving down the trail. Running's probably a far stretch from what I'm actually doing, but I'm slowly moving down the trail, and I catch a guy or a gal, and they're hobbling, right? They got the one leg going, the one limp. And I come up on them and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh, I got this blister. I got a toenail issue. I got a foot issue. My shoe, the sock is this. Something's going on with that right foot, right? Because that's why they're limping on it. And I'm like, why don't you stop and take care of it? I got this little kid in my backpack. And they're like, oh, no, I'm going to see my crew in 8 miles. And they're going to take care of it. So that it goes back to the point of like not doing nothing. But I think where I'm going with this is more of like a timeliness of it. And I know that you have kits that you were building and distributing. I think you were at Leadville doing that as well. So I really wanted to talk about timeliness, but also what's in your kit that you're distributing out, and what are you recommending to be in your kit? I want to know if I have everything in my kit. Is really what I want to know.
This is an excellent question. So let's just never in the history of a blister has one ever improved by ignoring it. Can we just agree on that?
Yes.
There is a time, we're talking about ultras, so there's no hard and fast. Like there are times when it is appropriate to just freaking get done. You know, you're towards the end of the race, you just want to get done, you don't care, you can just gut through, grit it out, and just get to the finish. But during an event, you are 100% correct. The sooner you address it, because you want to mitigate the damage. Once the epidermis is damaged and the dermis, which has the blood vessels and the nerves underneath it, once that starts becoming injured or even exposed because the epidermis split or tore, now you're just going to be in a lot more pain. And that can really affect, and some people are more sensitive. Like some people can limp for miles and they just limp. But a lot of folks, you start altering your stride because your foot hurts, your toe hurts, you got a blister. Now they're going to blow out the knee on the other side, or they're at a higher risk for turning their ankle and creating an actual musculoskeletal injury that's going to take a lot longer to heal than just letting the epidermis heal after the race. So not ignoring anything happening with your foot is the ideal situation. So just, why do we not respect our feet? Hang on, I got to get my kit. So you're exactly 100% right. You're a genius. Carrying a tiny little kit of the basic supplies that can help you. Because most of the time people don't want to stop because they don't want to take the time. But if you actually do the math of how much you're going to get slowed down by having foot pain because of a preventable foot care issue, it's going to be a lot faster than the 5 minutes that you're stopping to address that care issue. My kits have... So you really just need the basics. You don't need to have a ton of stuff. You need to have something to clean the skin with. So like I have an alcohol, the little packaged alcohol pads. Those are like, $4 for 200. So like 4 of those. You need to have, it's really good to have something like liquid resin or something that kind of makes your skin a little tackier. So tincture of benzoin is what we've been we meaning me and John, because it's used in the hospital setting to create a tacky surface upon which you can better adhere tape. It actually protects the skin, but so for kids, you can get like these little ampules of tincture of benzoin. I don't use tincture of benzoin in general in anywhere other than the kits anymore, because I found that Skin Tack or Mastisol are a far superior product. They're not staining they're not as staining as the benzoin is brown. It kind of gets everything brown. But the Skin Tack or Mastisol actually last longer. They're more of a liquid resin, as opposed to the benzoin is a little bit of a different has some different compounds. Having something, because if you're on the side of the trail, something that increases the stickiness of your skin for your the tape to stick to it. They're tiny. A needle, like an 18 gauge, is a really good thickness for lancing blisters. So if in doubt, always, if you have a blister, you want to lance it if you're in an event, because what you want to do is think about the damage. You put a needle through some tiny little holes in the skin, and then you cover it with tape. That is so much less of and more of a controlled environment than if you ignore the blister, let it tear on its own, get dirt and everything ground into it, have the roof of the blister completely torn off, the dermis underneath exposed. That's just a whole mess. So your needle, and then I pre-cut tape for the toes, and so little toes.
And that's K tape, just to make sure we're talking
Kines-
apples to apples here. Yeah,
yeah,
kinesiology
I don't
tape,
do brands.
KT tape.
I don't talk brands. I talk kinesiology tape. So that's the.
I guess KT tape is actually a brand, but yeah.
Yeah, it's become used. The term has become ubiquitous and kind of used like for any type of kinesiology tape. So people use it like Kleenex. Kleenex is a brand, but it's actually a type of facial tissue. So any type of kinesiology tape. I don't use a KT tape is not the brand that I prefer. I typically use a different brand, but it's the tape that it stretches lengthwise, not widthwise. It's breathable, and it's just really forgiving. It works really, really well for foot care. So yeah, just tape, a needle, benzoin, alcohol, and then some type of a skin barrier, some type of a hydrophobic layer, whether it's squirrel's nut, Skin Tack, or squirrel's nut, or salty britches, or that kind of thing. And then you're covered. That's kind of all the things you need. It's a tiny little kit. Doesn't take up any space. Not having something you need is going to cause more trouble than that tiny little amount of space that a kit takes up. It's a good question. Did I miss anything? Did you miss anything? Do you have anything
The only thing
different?
I'm missing is the cool sticker on your bag that says Dr. Tanya's foot care kit. That's the only thing I'm really missing is the sticker. But I got almost that exact same bag. I mean, exactly
Good,
to a
good.
T. Yeah.
And here's the thing you probably noticed. Here's the thing that's not. You want to pre-cut your tape. So you don't have to be dicking around with it when you're on the trail. Yeah, so I just kind of created this just on a side note, created this logo. It's not, the final one, but it'll work.
Yeah.
Somebody said you should go to ChatGPT and get to fine tune your logo. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went into that the other day and I was like, oh, I want to fine tune this logo. And then basically gave me back, it looked like a potato with lines to indicate it was moving. And then the text was describing an athletic shoe with movement, fluid movement, beautiful lines. I'm like, that's a potato. So just so you know, ChatGPT or Claude they're not a place to go for image creation.
Not just yet, but they're probably getting there.
Yeah, a little bit better.
For those
GoDaddy.
For those that are listening, though, and not watching the show, Dr. Tanya's little pouch there was probably the size of a credit card. So it takes up so little space in your backpack. I tuck it in that wallet pocket of my vest.
Yes.
I try to keep it dry, and I try to keep it out of the elements as much as possible. I'm actually trying to keep it out of sight, so maybe I won't even need it. But if I need it, I do have it. And I can sit down and take care of my foot on the side of the trail in that 5-minute time period and make back all the time that I lost sitting there by running the next 8 miles to my crew instead of
more quickly
dragging my right foot.
Yeah. And then here's the other thing and this is like, Mandy and I talked about this at Leadville, is that there's just a lot of variation in the quality of foot care that's provided at races, or the education that people have, or the interest people have, the supplies that they have. So if you have your own kit and you're running a race and you end up in an aid station and they hand you a blister patch, like, you need to first of all just be absolutely offended. Send them my way. You need to be like, put the blister patch down and back away slowly. But you will, if you have your own proper supplies, you'll never be in a situation where the aid station people mean well, but they just don't have access to the proper.
So Tonya, we talked a little bit about this at Leadville, but you've got the book. Obviously, you're making a presence still at races and educating people that way. With what's next for you? How else are you getting all of this awesome knowledge into the running world, and where can people find you on that note?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. So my latest endeavor is, well, I finally realized like I actually need to do a better job of sharing this info. I've got a website called drtonyafootcare.com, and I'm fleshing out, the vision is to have online resources for people, and eventually having foot care specialist certification available for people. Foot care courses, or people can learn like the basics of foot care, and have that just be a resource for folks so that they can get really good quality information on more of an evidence-based approach to foot care. Like, I would love to have certified foot care specialists infiltrating the ultra running world, who all have like a high level of knowledge, who are using current best practices, and are going to be elevating the foot care knowledge and techniques across the ultra running world, so that fewer people are affected during their races by something that is largely preventable. That's my vision. I just need to get on it.
No, that's great, and it's so needed in this space because it is the Wild West out there at the aid stations, and I've seen it, maybe not firsthand as a participant, but I've worked a lot of aid stations, and some of the really long races, mile 250 of the Monster 300. I was the aid station captain there, and captain a few different aid stations, 200 plus at Moab 240. So mile 200 or mile 220. So I see the later effects of the foot care and the need for it, but I also like the way the participant waits for that foot care specialist to do the work on them. But it's a pretty long process, and it's time consuming, and there's probably not enough people with a ton of great knowledge. Again, they mean well, and they're volunteers, and we'd love to have them there. But again, like, there is just not enough understanding of exactly what's going on with the foot, and the timeliness of how to like clean it, treat it, put sock back on it, and get them out of there.
100%. It's so interesting that you brought that up. Like, just off two things. I do foot care consults, especially that I've been doing a lot more of them for people who are doing multi-day races, like the 200, 250, 300-mile races. Because like, there's a lot of things to consider for prevention, and it's not just like, I advise on not just feet, but I had 3 runners in the Mongolian 300 that I did consults with prior to the race, and one of the runners, his tape lasted the entire race. His crew did such a great job. His feet looked pristine when he finished. He had one little callus that I always had on the outside of his heel. And then the other guys, they retaped twice. Think about cumulatively the amount of time they saved themselves by being proactive about their foot care strategies. Like, what else was I going with? It was the Mongolian. I distracted myself.
But I think you're absolutely right. I think that there is like a definite benefit to like the athlete being aware of what they need for their feet, as opposed to relying on an aid station person and their knowledge of what's going of feet and how to take care of them.
Yes, you are correct. Like, John and I have spent like a lot of time just being like I don't mind helping you during a race, especially if it's an A race and they just really just need the professional to get it done, because I'm quick. Like, we're fast. Like, I've done this. I crossed the 10,000 hour mark a long, long time ago, and so we're quick, and faster. I've got the products. I'm right there. I'm ready to go. But you're right. The runner really should be able to do their own foot care, because it can be faster. And it's interesting that you say, like, from a timing perspective, like, at Western States, like, I've been developing the foot care program there, elevating things, improving things. And one of the, I finally this year, I had enough skilled volunteers that I've been keeping data at that race since like 2012 on like who comes in, how many runners we have, what time of day. This year, we were able to start tracking the amount of time that the runners spent in the chair because I finally had enough people, and we got our time in the chair down to as little as 6 minutes
Wow,
total.
that's great.
Now,
Yeah.
when you sit down at like a place like Western States and you're sitting in my chair, we're doing all the crewing things. So I'm working on feet, but if I need to, I'm barking, instructions to the crew. So by the time we're done with feet, they're ready to leave the aid station and they're back on the trail. And so it was 6 to 16 minutes. Like 16 was the longest. We had 2 people per runner for as much as we at the majority of the time. So there's a little bit of push where you only had to have we had 1 per runner, but like being able to bring that amount of time that it takes for foot care. And the reason we can be fast is yes, we have more than 1 person ideally, or you've done it before and you have everything set up. You're not fumbling around. And so you're right. The runner does have a responsibility. And I think the other thing, like kind of to tap into is just if you have somebody in your life who is interested in running, especially longer races, or if you are in the ultra running world, you really don't have the luxury to say, "Oh, I don't like feet," because that's just rude. Like it's so. I mean, I'm biased, but to choose to not be able to help someone, like at some point, the chance of something happening related to the feet is very, very high. And so just maybe, yeah, okay, I get it. You don't really like feet, but you're dealing with runners and you're going to have to at some point interact with a foot. And so why would you not at least have just the basic understanding of how to do things so that you can serve the people that you're around best? You don't have to step in. It's like on an airplane, is there a doctor in the house? You don't have to say I'm here if there's other people available. But I just think just having a basic understanding of what to do and how to do it can really, really save your bacon.
One last question for you. We got through the race, the scenario. I loved it. I think it's timely, pre-event, during the event, and now. What about in between events? What preventative maintenance should I be doing all year long for my feet? Should I be peppering them with? Should I be drying them out? Should I be shaving those calluses down on a regular basis? Should I be lubing them in my long training runs on the weekend? What kind of maintenance should I be doing all year long with my feet?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of touched on it like at the beginning. Basic foot maintenance would be, maintaining the skin and the nails, and whether or not you're moisturizing or like the drying out, there's different kind of theories on that. It really depends on like what is happening. Like if you're training in a dry environment, there are adaptations. There can be benefits. It really depends on the situation. If you're training in a dry environment, then your foot skin gets accustomed to being in a dry environment. That can put your skin at risk for tearing because it's thicker, like during an event when it gets waterlogged or macerated. So that's really kind of a judgment that you need to make. But just basic foot care, keeping the skin healthy, keeping like the calluses, like for me, like if I see a callus, I want to know why it's happening. Because if you're consistently getting calluses that are moderate or thicker, like moderate to max, I don't know really what maximum would be, but like if you're getting thick calluses, there's something wrong. There's a cause that should be addressed because there's something going on with your mobility, your shoe choices, like there's an opportunity to that's another soapbox for me. I think the choices people make with regard to the shoes that they choose, there's a lot of education that's available. So if you're consistently getting bigger calluses, why don't you figure out and those calluses can cause a blood blister or cause issues during a race. Why would you not want to be figuring out how to have your foot and your shoe selection be more in tune to what it is that your body needs and supports your foot in a way that it moves more true and you're not having a lot of friction in one area because that's affecting your entire leg. So basic, just keep your toenails, pay attention to your feet, like just the norm, like pretend you're like a woman in Florida and people are going to be looking at your feet in sandals and you actually care about what other people think. Like, just think about that. Like, people shouldn't be, make some effort, just basic care. And you say like from the hydrophobic layer, using the skin barrier during your long runs really is the time to kind of play around with that product. For the shorter time, unless you have issues, in general, using like a skin barrier, hydrophobic layer, you really only need those for the longer runs, like 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours, unless you typically start getting skin breakdown or maceration early on. But that's the time to kind of play around with the different products and decide which ones you might like, because like Salty Britches is 10, 12 hours and it works really well in extreme conditions. So you might want to use that just for your 100 milers, your 200 milers, your longer races. Whereas like Squirrel's Nut, like that might be fine for just your daily use. And the Squirrel's Nut has like a foot specific formulation called Happy Toes. It has peppermint in it and tea tree oil, and that's like antimicrobial. It has some drying effects, but it also has some moisturizing effects. That's a nice something to use, like if you want to keep your skin hydrated just on the regular. Like it's a good product to use more for maintenance, but just make some effort to have your feet be attended to.
It's a great answer. So I think it just adds on to the list of that post-race, post-season, where we're thinking about dialing on our nutrition, like probably taking some time to evaluate it too, right? Same thing with like nutrition or any aches and pains on a run. You might forget about it 2-3 days later. So maybe taking that immediate note and working on it on the off season. I think that's good advice and more we should be thinking about.
Yeah, I think like a level of curiosity, like why is like I think that's missing sometimes. There's a lot of people who are in shoes that are not the best for them and they don't know it. I'm doing a lot of educating folks on better metrics to use to choose the shoes that you're wearing. It should be based on your mobility. It should be based on how you move, not some runner who doesn't really. Shoes don't make the runner. Sorry. If they did, then, because the quality of shoes is pretty consistent across the board. If the elites would have significant changes in their performance when they change shoe companies, sponsors, like it's just, you should be there. You can, I think, being curious, like, like here's take a look at your feet after you've done a long run. See what happens. Notice where your hot spots are. If you get a callus in an area consistently, maybe wonder why and see if perhaps you can figure out how to have that not happen as much. Because if you're getting a hot callus, the way that you're moving is it is concentrating force in one specific small area. And that can be something that can cause not just skin breakdown, but that shows how you're moving. And that can be, your foot's connected to your ankle, which is connected to your knee, which is connected to your hip. So that could be correlated with like a recurrent knee kind of something or other. And so just being a little curious about the status of your feet and what your particular foot ankle complex needs. I think I would like people to have pay attention to your feet, like include them in your daily, include them, put them on the list. Like so many people, they don't even consider their feet. They're like an afterthought until they break down. They think nothing of their feet until the feet have no choice but to break down, and then now they're affected. And now they want to think about their feet, but you can't really unring that bell, especially it's in the middle of a race.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Tonya. We appreciate your time. That was hugely helpful. It supports all the things I've been telling my athletes, so I love to hear it again. Yes. Yeah. And I have a question. Could we find those foot care baggies online somewhere?
Oh, I need to figure out how to do that. That's actually a good point. That's a good question.
So we'll look for that in a little bit. Where can our listeners find you at? I know you mentioned the website that you're building or trying to reestablish, right?
Yeah, the new website is Dr. Tonya Foot Care, and so that's my foot care brand. Instagram or YouTube are probably good options as well. So it's Tonya K. Olson for YouTube and Tonya K. Olson DPT for Instagram. And yeah, I'm putting more resources out there.
And it's Olson with two O's. I actually spelled it wrong on the email. I spelled it wrong on the email. It's two O's, right? So OLSON if you're looking it up. If you're in there in Instagram right now searching for Dr. Tonya Olson, it's OLSON.
Yeah, that's right. I'm Norwegian, but apparently, yeah, that's the Danish spelling. O-N. It wasn't until I left Minnesota that people started spelling it with an E. I'd never heard of it. Like, yeah, it's so funny. But yeah, you're right. Stay tuned. There's lots of resources coming, but I really appreciate the time to talk about feet with you all. Yeah, I'm always trying to be mindful of the time as well. So sorry, guys.
Yeah, and maybe
Thank you.
I'd love to invite you back for maybe that was like the surface level of our feet, right? And so maybe we could have like a separate show about the interiors of our feet and the workings
I would
and physical
love,
therapy. So yeah,
yeah,
things that we don't
I
touch, like
would
things that we don't
love
see on the surface, right?
love to talk a little bit more about the foot and ankle mobility
Mm.
and the consistent variables that I see that contribute to recurrent toe and like recurrent foot issues during races that are related to shoe choices and mobility issues that can be remediated. So just because some people just have nothing but trouble, like in the medical world, like
Mm.
we say that 20% of the people have 80% of the problems. And that's a little bit of the case with runners. Like some people just have nothing but trouble, but there's some specific variables that I see consistently that contribute to those issues that can be
Mm.
remediated with just a little bit of awareness. So yeah, that'd be fun.
That
Everyone get
sounds
a
juicy
kit.
already. I'm so excited for it.
Tune in next
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. That was great information and excited to see what else you put out into the world coming up soon.
Heck yeah. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.